When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, you will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now in which there is no past, and there is no future, and there is no thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Welcome to the Think Space podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro, where we discuss human nature and the practical application of philosophy. To find out more about our cohort course and membership community, please head over to www.thinkspace.academy. We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is red. This is green. This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Right, Danny, in my humble opinion, the top 3 TV shows of all time are as follows. Number 1, The Sopranos. Number 2, The Wire. And number 3, Breaking Bad. And the chat we're going to have today is about a series called Mr Inbetween, which I reckon is number 4. So the 4th best TV show of all time. And I thought this is just an interesting one to chat about because there's some themes in it that are quite similar to those other 3 shows that I mentioned, where you've got a protagonist who is a criminal. He's basically like a bit of a hitman, but he's also a family man. And that theme runs through a lot of those other shows where you've got this main character who, on the face of it, is just, we should hate them. Like, they're just a moral nightmare. They're killing people, they're ripping people off, they're criminals, they're adulterers, they're all these different, like, really, really nasty characteristics you would think of in human beings. But we love these shows that have those characters. And we don't just love the show, we actually love the characters themselves. So people like Tony Soprano, we get a buzz off watching them, we're rooting for them. Like Walter White in Breaking Bad, we're actually rooting for him, hoping he can, like, do what he's trying to do. So it's an interesting facet of, I certainly think, just human experience that, yeah, why is that we love these characters? Now, Mr Inbetween, it's an Australian show. I think it finished just this year, and it's a bit of an awkward one to get in the UK. I think it's on Hulu, and I know I've seen it's mentioned on Disney, so it might need a bit of hunting down, and that's probably a fair warning to people at the start. If you are going to watch it, which we definitely recommend you do, we're going to try not to give any spoilers, but try and watch it before you listen to this, if you can, just so that we don't spoil anything for you. But we'll try and make it not too many spoilers. But yeah, Australian show. Main guy is a character called Ray Shoesmith, and he's played by an actor called Scott Ryan, who also wrote the show and I think directed some of the episodes as well. So track it down, but we're going to get into Mr Inbetween and just some quite philosophical ideas that link into it and emerge from it, and you can apply to it for just this human experience of why we like these characters. Not least Ray Shoesmith in Mr Inbetween. Do you want to start with just because I recommended it to you, didn't I, Danny, and was like, you have to watch this show, it's amazing. Come on, get on it. Which you did. So what's your review initially? Because I know you've enjoyed it, but how did you find your viewing experience?
From the trailer, really, it's a great trailer because it's immediately talking about, do you think you've got an anger problem, isn't it, in therapy? He's in a therapy group, and the guy's very modern and trying to stop all these people who've been sent to an anger therapy group, because they've done something like punched someone on the street or shouted at someone or done something a bit more serious, and they're in this therapy group so that they don't have to go to prison, or whatever. And he says, do you think you have an anger problem? And he goes, no, I don't think I do, no. And he said, well, why? You just hit someone. He goes, well, he deserved it. And he said, oh, right, so that's all right, is it? And he went, yeah, that's great.
So I was walking down the street with my daughter, and 2 guys come along, bumped into her, and she had an ice cream and, dropped her ice cream and...
So you assaulted him?
Well... No, they started swearing. She's only 8, so...
So you bashed him while your daughter was just standing there?
No, not while she was standing there. I bashed him later.
Okay, well, how did you feel afterwards? after it all happened?
Fine.
Do you enjoy hitting people?
I wouldn't say I enjoy hitting people. You know, if I hit somebody, I generally got a pretty good reason.
And you think you had a good reason?
Did I just say that?
So can you remind me again what that reason was?
Well, they were being arseholes.
The world is full of assholes, Ray. You do realise that.
Yeah, and you know why?
Why?
Because people let them get away with it.
So straight away, it's a bit like, all right, this character's interesting. He's not folding straight away, saying, "I know I'm a bad person. I snap out. It's my fault. I need to clean my ethics and moral. I'm just something wrong with me." He was like, he said, "If you respect me," he says, "we haven't got a problem." He said, "Disrespect me, we have a problem." And then he said, "In prison, there are consequences that if you don't respect people." He says, "Out in the world, there's no consequences. So I'm just thinking that there should be." And then the guy said, "Oh, so you actually think you're doing society good then?" And he went, "Yeah, I do." So straight away, even watching that in the trailer and it's, intertwining with all these clips, which we'll put in the show notes there, the trailer, and if you watch it, it gets you straight away. And I suppose, like, for me, obviously Sopranos was number one for me as well. And I suppose it's what it is. It's the characters are captivating because the acting itself is just phenomenal. I mean, that's the first thing. I have to say that the acting of this guy, is unbelievable. And it's like you can't imagine him not being him or acting anything else.
Yeah.
That's after 2 episodes, only 25 minutes. And he has this really wolfish, sheepish grin, and he smiles, and you don't know whether he's like a fox, whether he's going to make a smile that's a genuine nice smile, or a smile that he's just going to bite your head off. So, and as the viewer, because you're in on it and you know what he's like, and he's a hitman and he does that, you're always a bit like, oh, how's this scene going to go? And you don't know ever which way the scene's going to go. Some scenes go like violent. Some scenes are just, whatever, he relaxes. You're always thinking, what is going to happen now? But the crux of it for me is justice. The whole thing is like, it's about retribution if you've been wronged, in terms of justice. And it's also like restoring balance. So it's like, you did that to me, so you're getting it. And he says that the people that he tends, that he's a hitman and he has to go and kill or whatever, they deserved it. They're involved. At some level, they deserved it. And I very rarely pick on anyone who doesn't deserve it. And you see that through the show. On the flip side of that, he's very sort of caring, isn't he, for his daughter? And he's got all these, he has all these modern day simple things he does. He'll watch telly, play computer games. He has to go and buy socks. He has to, do mundane things. But all of a sudden, he's having to use his skills as a hitman type thing. It's a bit like First Blood, isn't it? The Stallone film where he was just trying to get on with his normal life, and he got wound up, and then he kicked into all his background army skills. He didn't really want to do it, but he felt like there was injustice, and he just goes about settling that injustice on all the police. Now, in reality, you'd think that you'd be up for the police, but you're actually up for the guy who's been picked on, because you think it's fair he gets his revenge because he was picked on and for no reason. And I think I feel that a bit, don't we? With politicians and all these things, I think we always, or most of us, have a level of injustice, don't we? Whether it's getting ripped off with money, the water companies, the gas, the prices, the politicians, like the COVID. It's a primal feeling that we're all supposed to behave and get along and not rock the boat, otherwise there'd be absolute chaos. And I suppose we repress a lot of that, what we really want to do in terms of getting our revenge and justice and balancing things out, for fairness. We repress a lot of that. So for me, when you watch someone actually, a TV show, and they're actually taking it into their own hands, and they're quite good people, because you get to see behind the curtains of their life, but then they go out and actually get revenge on bad people. It's class, isn't it? It's perhaps they've more guts as well than we'd ever have.
I made a note of that sense of justice. Certainly in Mr Inbetween, there's this sense that I wonder if that's like quite cathartic to watch, because He does. It's just black or white, isn't it? There's sort of good or bad, and it's right or wrong. And if someone wrongs him, he's just like, right, you're getting it.
Yeah.
And it just, there's no like filter in between. It's just 0 to 100, isn't it? So like, there's a couple of funny scenes where it's more like road rage, isn't it? Where someone like cuts him up and then gets out of the car and starts road raging on him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, well, you were in the wrong, so you're getting it. There's
Yeah.
no in between. But I think that could be quite cathartic for people. He's doing stuff that I would imagine a lot of us wish we could.
Yeah.
So when you are wronged in some way in life and you feel like there's been an injustice, because of the law and different things, you just keep your powder dry, don't you? You don't really do anything. Whereas he's just like, no. So I think that could be quite cathartic. Seeing him exact justice on people is quite nice to watch. It's quite funny and it's a bit invigorating, isn't it? You get a buzz off like watching him when he, like you say, he gives it that smile and then he's like, and you're like, yes, here we go. You're getting it now.
Well, he has the skills, obviously, and the confidence to carry out. He's not going to get like hurt. You know, if me and you started doing that, well, we haven't got any background army skills or fighting skills to see it through. So it'd be a bad decision. Well, I saw a video yesterday, I think, on Jeremy Vine, radio presenter, had posted online, and it was a cyclist who was like a vigilante cyclist type thing, crept up on a car that was parked in a queue behind a lorry, and this guy was in this little car, and he was on his phone, which you're not supposed to do, obviously. And he was just sad or whatever on his phone. And this vigilante little cyclist thing, he filmed him. And the guy in the car went, "What are you doing?" He went, "I'm filming you." He says, "What for?" He says, "You're on your phone in your car and it's illegal. So I'm going to send it to the police." So in a funny way, that's like, that should be justice, shouldn't it? You know, you're breaking the law. I'm being a bit... And this guy in the car goes, "You what? You doing what?" He says, "Put that phone away." You know, this guy, no, you're breaking. I've done 1,000 of these. You're going to get, it's a disgrace. And he really got on his moral high horse, this cyclist. Like, and this driver just lost it in terms of giving him abuse. He didn't get out of the car, but it was quite funny because he was calling him all the names under the sun. And some of it was really funny. He just lost it on him. And when in the comments to the video, most people stuck up for the motorist because it was like, yeah, okay, he's breaking the law. He's not driving at 30 miles an hour plus, and he's on his phone. He's stuck behind the lorry. They're at the lights. They're in a queue. He's looked down at his phone. He's on it. And this guy's come along being a pest, like entered into his space, trying to be a police person when he's not. And most people in the comments were like, that cyclist deserved everything he got in terms of abuse because he's crossed the line there. So I think we all go around with our own understanding of what, even though the rules and things sometimes are set, we still get a sense of sometimes like what's right and what isn't right. You know, like it's not right, like when it's not right to punch someone in the face because they've started giving you verbal abuse. But Ray in the show will do that and just go like, and it's a little bit like, yeah, it's not right to punch someone, but you don't think, you shouldn't have gone that far, Ray. You're just happy because you're like, that's wrong. You don't treat people like that. You know, these people haven't read the room type thing. You know what I mean?
There's a scene, well, it's in the trailer, so it doesn't spoil anything saying it, but there's quite a funny scene, isn't there, where he's walking down the street with his daughter having an ice cream.
Yeah.
And these two young lads sort of like barge into them and knock the ice cream out of her hand.
Yeah.
And Ray's obviously like, "What you doing, mate?" Like, well, and they just like front him up, don't they? And sort of get in his face as if he's the one in the wrong. And he obviously then like banks it, like puts his daughter in the car so she doesn't see anything, and then he jumps them like round the corner and basically exacts his revenge, doesn't he? And you're right, you're in that, you're like, yeah, they deserve that, even though it's a way bigger escalation, isn't it, than just bumping into someone. He's now like leathering, but you're rooting for him. I did link it, some of this stuff, so that sense of fairness. I don't think we've done an episode on it, but we've definitely done workshops on it on ThinkSpace, but like Albert Camus and absurdism, and that notion of, you know, that thing you can just hit you at any time, can't you? That sense that the universe is just absurd and it doesn't really care, or the feeling that the universe doesn't care about you is absurd. Like you're looking for this ultimate meaning and a sense of justice, and if I put effort in, it'll get repaid, and people who are nice people and do good deeds will get repaid, and if you're a nasty person, you'll get punished.
Yeah.
Well, the universe doesn't give a shit, does it? The universe is just totally ambivalent and uncaring, which gives us that feeling of the absurd. And I wonder if it's a bit like that, like people we don't like seeing people getting away with things. So when we're seeing these characters like Ray and Tony Soprano and people like that exacting some of that revenge and that justice, it feels less absurd, doesn't it? It makes the world feel a bit more rational and like cause and effect and less complex. And
yeah, well, Breaking Bad is all that, isn't it? Because although he's doing all these things that are illegal and so on, you're always up for him because he's the guy has just been given cancer out of nowhere, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So it's absurd. So every time Walter White might do something that you think, flipping heck, it's always, shrouded in and surrounded by the fact that, well, he needs to make money because he's dying anyway and he needs to pay things off. And then he ends up in big dilemmas where there's always an absurd, like that, like his meaning has collapsed, hasn't it? It's like, I've tried to be a teacher, I'm going along, Nietzsche's slave morality in some ways, isn't it? Be a good person, go to church, do this, be nice, be a stand-up citizen, don't say anything, bite your lip, never get yourself into trouble, and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, well, why me? Why have I got ill? And that level of absurdity that this isn't fair or this has just happened, I'm going to die anyway, might as well just go for it and do this and use my skills in this way. In his case, a chemistry teacher making class age lunch. So yeah, that's it. There's the absurd, and Ray in himself, there's elements of hints that he'd been in war, hasn't there? A bit like Rambo. So they'd been Vietnam, but he might have been in Iraq. I know his father had been in Vietnam, hadn't he? They took So his father, he doesn't really get on with and has issues with, but he gets to a point at the end, doesn't it, where he says, look, I would have been a different person, but I went to Vietnam and all this stuff happened. I was never the same guy again. I'm sorry. And Ray kind of didn't say, you're all right, mate, but he started looking after him a bit, didn't he? A bit more, and forgave him, but didn't have to say it. He just sort of did it. And there was an element there of, I know what you mean, pal, because it happened to me as well.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I like about it as well on a different level. We've talked a lot on this podcast about philosophy, haven't we? And that if it actually came down to it, in the real heat of the moment, it's quite, philosophy is useful and good as you tick along in life without anything majorly going wonky or off. And you can, I'm going to do Epicurus this month, or I'm thinking of Camus this month, so on. But when life hits you hard and you're in a real absurd state and things are coming at you left, right, and centre or whatever, that's when it's like that becomes the most prevalent factor in your experience rather than some detached pondering of it. And what I liked about this show, and it's like that phenomenological immersion, he's right there, phenomenology meaning the study of lived experience, how you get a real feeling of how it is for the character from the inside out. So you're almost with him, like going, I can slightly imagine being in your shoes, and that's why I can empathise with you, why you're reacting and doing these things, rather than being on sort of the outside, like just looking at characters like you might do on a weaker show. With these shows, they almost drag you into like, I know why you're being that way. I can feel that a bit in myself. So they convey a real, and it's also very ambiguous, isn't it? It's like 1 minute I'm in a good mood, the next minute I'm not. 1 minute I'm feeling peaceful and happy, and the next minute something comes in, bang, and I'm angry over something really trivial. So we all know, for example, like you shouldn't really get stressed about the day-to-day things. Like, oh, my car's gone in, my car's broke down, or someone's crashed into my front wall and knocked over that. It's a disgrace, and they're driven off, and it can really eat you up. But no one's dying, are they? Nobody's got an illness. Nobody, we're not in Ukraine getting bombed. We know in the bigger picture we shouldn't be really getting ticked off and stressed about these simple little things, or our football results, or England losing to Australia or something, or you get you in your allotment, 3 years growing these things and they've all died. Oh, someone's dug it up. Doesn't really matter, really. It's just a bit of land, and it's not like you've had some bad news. But you know what I mean? We all get stressed over the things that in common sense detached terms aren't worth getting stressed about. But we still, as you live things and things come up, you still get peeved off and annoyed and moody because of, things that aren't that important, but they are important to you in that moment. That's what I find, I like how they convey that as well, that contradiction all the time. You can be stressed out about, like, you've burnt the tea or you've made tea and nobody said thank you for it, and you're going around like nobody loves me. Well, I can't believe it. Put a load of effort in. And then you watch TV and there's some child, 4 years old, got leukemia or something, and and you just think, what am I on about? That sort of switch in perspective kind of happens a lot. And that's what this show does. It's just switching perspective so quick. And I think Sopranos did that, didn't it?
That's why those shows are so brilliant. They do. Because I think, to be honest, sometimes TV gets a bad rap these days, doesn't it? It's like, oh, look at you just like watching bloody Netflix and you're not doing anything with your life. And you just like, it has a negative connotation often. But I think those genuinely top shows, like we've already mentioned, that's why they're so brilliant. They hook you into that world. Like you feel like you're part of it. And there's so many that they're just tapping into what it is to be like a human being. And you can empathise with them, can't you? It gets you questioning. So I don't think you can really watch those shows just as entertainment. You have to sort of buy into them and like you get involved, don't you, personally with the character. You feel for them. You're worried for them. You're scared of them. There's all those emotions are in play when they're done really well. And I have read a couple of interviews and listened to interviews with Scott Ryan, who wrote it and started it. And that comes across, doesn't it? It seems like he's had and I think he openly admits he's had quite a difficult upbringing, quite a difficult life in many ways. And that comes across in the show. There's lots of little set pieces and little interactions that they're obviously based on an experience he's had.
Yeah.
There's a really good one with his school teacher, isn't there, where he meets him at a reunion when him and his mate go back to this school reunion, and he's having a cigarette outside with his old teacher, and they're having this really quite fraught conversation where he's telling him about, look, this is how you affected me when I was younger. And I know there's a couple of such instances where it's like, oh yeah, that actually happened in my life. That was based on a particular thing. And that comes across, which again, you root for the character because you can tell it's genuine. It's not just like a really cheesy show that's just been scripted to hit all whatever the algorithm says people want. And it's like, no, this is genuine human stuff just on the screen. And that, for me, you mentioned the word phenomenological. I think it is. It's very much that. You can tell it's his lived experience looking out on the world and some of these experiences that he's then put into film. And that in itself, so hard to do, innit? You can't do that unless it's genuine. It needs that lived experience to be able to do it. So that definitely comes across in this.
That's why it's philosophical, isn't it? Because philosophy gets its ideas from life. So because he's just presenting life on the show, then you can see, like Man's Search for Meaning, Frankel's in it, isn't it? Where he believes in that if you always have to have a purpose, and that's his daughter. It's like his daughter is his central point, isn't it? He comes back because all sorts go on, but without his daughter, you don't know if he'd be quite anchored and have enough meaning. And lots of his decisions are then based on, oh, my daughter's like going to be older one day, and would I want her to go through this? And and I'm also a father, and how does that play into the mix now? The responsibility I feel as a father to some of these decisions I'm making over there. And again, I'm sure that's what every parent, has. It's like, I've got me as an individual in my life and my decisions, but I'm also a parent, and I've got this, this other kind of way I have to be. That's what I was saying earlier. When a kid's born, it's like a mother's born and a father's born as well. It's not just like just the same person in a way. You have this different thing. But it's funny, I sent it to my dad and said, watch this. And I asked him if he liked the show. And he said, did I like the show? Because I couldn't turn it off. I watched all 3 seasons pretty much back to back. Absolutely brilliant, best ever. And I said, did you like the scene where he confronted his teacher? He went, loved it. Because Dad, as a teacher, he's always banged on about a PE teacher that abused kids, basically, humiliated them, would hit them with a slipper in front of others, would make them walk in the cold, said he was a terrible fella. And he was a good teacher, like he was a PE teacher. He's actually good at getting things, but he would humiliate people for not being good at sport or doing things or being late. And he would do it in a way that was shameful. And they had a reunion themselves. Dad didn't go, but a few of the others went, and he was there, this teacher. And Dad kicked off a bit with his mate, saying, I can't believe you talked to him all this time later. can't believe you talked to him, and was all right with him. And they were like, well, he's an old man now. And, he said, I'd never talked to him. So I said to Dad, did you like the scene where he confronted his old science teacher who'd humiliated him, and made him walk in front of the other students doing a certain thing, and they all laughed at him? He said, I absolutely loved it because it's so absolutely true what I've carried a bit of that with me. And my dad's a kind of character who does stand up to people and says things where you think, oh, shut your mouth, don't make any trouble, it made sense why he absolutely loved the show. Sticking up for people who are a bit vulnerable as well.
Well, he does that. The character Gary is a bit of a sort of comedic element of the show, isn't it? And that's his relationship with him. There's honor, isn't there? There's like sticking up for your mates, and like when he rings him, he's like, oh, can you? I've got on a bit of a bind here. Can you do this for me? And he's there straight away, and for his mates, he's like full on honor. I've got your back. Doesn't matter what it is, I'll give you what you need. I'll help you out. That's probably quite a rare quality these days, I think, isn't it? Or it's rarer than it used to be. So that's always nice to see. Those are like buddy movies are always like that. There's nothing better than a good buddy movie where you just see two guys who got each other's back. So that's running through it with a bit of comedic aspects that are just like quite heartfelt at the same time, because I don't think you see that as much anymore.
The other thing in it, and what was coming through with me as well, was one of my favourite ever films is Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
By Tarantino. And why is Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs really?
You can see that in it as an influence, can't you?
Yeah, they were so liked because of the dialogue. And it was like, particularly the John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson relationship, where they were driving to the scene and they were talking about, burgers and stuff in Europe. And mayonnaise and ketchup and all this, and you're like, what are these guys? Where are they going? Like, and they're very, very mundane, just chatting, humorous, funny, talking about pigs and and laughing. And next thing, bam, they're hitting on the hitman, aren't they? They're shooting someone, and it's that thing of like, and the same with the Reservoir Dogs when they're talking about tipping people and in the cafes. A dead, really silly little funny thing, but then they're always going to out do this bank job, and that's full of it, isn't it? That type of dialogue is that lazy, strange dialogue about what your favourite cartoon is, or if you were Superman, would see I'll beat Batman and the Invisible Man and all these dialogue, all them like weird crap dialogue that's not scripted really, just batting it off. That's in there loads, isn't it? So that's really interesting as well. It's just funny.
You mentioned Nietzsche and slave morality earlier, and I noted that as just like, that's interesting as a relevant theme that comes through, and the difference between that and master morality, because you definitely said Ray in the show and his own moral compass and the rules, I suppose, that he lives his life by, they're much more aligned with master morality, aren't they? Where it's slave morality, my understanding, it's very much that they're kind of like Christian values, aren't they? And it's like you abide by the doctrine or the virtues and the vices of that, and it's around things like kindness and empathy and those sorts of aspects. Whereas master morality is much more just good and bad, but it's what's good and bad for you rather than the herd or the community or the broader society.
Yeah.
And that's right, isn't it? In Mr Inbetween, that he's creating his own moral code in many ways. He's creating and coming up with his rules for life that are just about what's best for him. Like, what do I need to do? I'm cracking on, I'm getting on. I want to earn money, I've got a daughter. And it's like, these people are bad people, so they're getting in my way. I'm going through them. And that it's a nice contrast, isn't it, to just see that play out, like quite deep philosophical ideas. And I don't know if he'll have known that writing it, but just seeing it on screen and you can go, oh yeah, that's that and that's a bit of that, and it brings it to life for people. It makes that philosophy quite practical, I think. So there's one episode, isn't there, that's it's brutal to watch, where the kid goes missing in the shop.
Yeah.
And then they're looking for this missing kid, aren't they? We obviously won't spoil what happens, but I'm sure there's parents watching that, and it ends brutally with like what Ray ends up doing to the people who've got this kid. And I'm sure every parent in the world who watches that is like, yeah, they're getting what they deserve. Like that's full. Like, you'd be full on like a football fan, like cheering them on, wouldn't you? Even though it's like quite brutal to watch, and you're like, Jesus, this is like, it's violent there. And that's that master morality, I think. It's like, yeah, there's good or bad.
Yeah.
That's it. It's
Yeah, and that's it, exactly that. You know, you see things in the news, don't you? And that were, you know, people have done horrific things to other people for no reason. And you're like, why send them to prison? They just deserve their cold revenge right now. Like, and it'll stop people doing it again. And you know, why we could, and then people, oh, you can't do that and this and that and death penalty and all that stuff. So it is, but he's not bothered about that. He's just going into his own thing, isn't it? Because it is a bit obviously far-fetched, because, you know, a bit like Dexter and these shows and Sopranos, never get caught, you know, nothing ever, you know, the police with fingerprints. So there's lots of holes in it in terms of like, oh, but would that happen in reality? But what it is, just a piece of art, isn't it, really? And he's expressing that idea that we feel that way a lot of the time, and we would all like a mate who's like Ray.
well, even in that same episode, if you remember, he goes, because they're looking for the kid, aren't they?
Yeah.
And he gets a tip off, and they go around to this house where the guy's there with his family having like a bit of a, can't remember if it was like a Christmas dinner or they were just having dinner, and like his grandparents are there and stuff. And Ray just goes in with his shotgun, like blowing the wall open with the thing, and he's like, he's got the gun to the guy's grandma, going, right, where's this kid, or I'm going to blow your grandma's head off.
Yeah.
And even in that, you're watching it going, that's fair enough, that he's got to find this kid. She's
right.
Like, even though she's totally innocent in the situation, and it's a bit absurd and it's comedic, it's quite funny, but also you're like, bloody hell, like, you might do this.
Yeah, it's parts, you know, it's parts of where you don't want to look normally, isn't it? You know, you don't want to think that, and you don't want to think that you could get that angry and direct and throw your so-called morals out. And I think the slave morality thing was all, what Nietzsche's thing was that, like, right, you guys, you be very nice in the world, be slaves, and the only reason that you can basically, that you've decided that being a good person and all these things is because life is so hard for you because you're a slave. I get it. But if you believe in the afterlife, and that if you're a good, dutiful person and you follow all these, never snap and do everything as fair as you can, you will have the best time ever in heaven. You will not go to hell. So it was almost like a good mental sort of stoic tool to believe that, you know, if you was a, you know, like Christian and all these things and always did things well, you could at least die with peace knowing that you were on your way to heaven, right? Now, the Vikings would have been different. They were like, no, I'm going to die in war, go to Valhalla, you know, killing someone. So everyone has these beliefs that, you know, trying to basically mentally help you. And what Nietzsche said was, but master morality is a bit more like, no, I'll have a good time while I'm down here on Earth, thank you very much. I'll sort out my shit while I'm actually alive, and I won't even care about the afterlife. I'll just get on with what's right now. And obviously, leading on to, you know, Nietzsche's other elements of that weak link, but God is dead. You know, when you don't have the masses doing slave morality and being that way, if everybody was doing master morality, it could just be total and utter chaos. You can't have 50 Rays in one village. Do you know what I mean? You can't have 10 Tony Sopranos because as soon as they come onto each other, then they have to, one of them has to die and one of them has to win, type thing. So it's not like we're watching it going, yeah, we should all be like this, but it's a bit like, yeah, where is the guy that's going to go and take out that bad person? You know, where is the superhero who's going to take Putin out if we don't, you know, if we're alive, he's going to nuke somebody or something? Or where is the person who's going to rescue us from this and that? You know, that hero, James Bond figure, that person who's going to come in and just do what needs to be done to get everything right. But it doesn't mean you want to be that person. I certainly want to live Ray's life. But I wouldn't mind at a lot shallower level some of his clarity of thought because that's it. But you know what I mean? He doesn't suffer from too much ambiguity, does he? Only one scene where he's like, oh, should I do this or should I do that?
Yeah.
This, and he gets a bit, oh, I don't know, and he can tell his mind is a bit, and he gets a bit softer, doesn't he, in parts as he moves on and he starts to relax. But most of the time, he's got no ambiguity. He's just, right, that's happened, this is happening. Will you do this job? How much money? X amount of thousands of pounds. What's the person done? They've done this. Yeah, I'll do the job. You know, it's like, flipping out, didn't take much decision making. And then on another occasion, why? What's the job? Oh, it's just this woman I want, you know, and finds out that like this politician's being an absolute git. And goes, oh, right, well, I ain't doing the job. In fact, you're going to pay this person this amount of money, and if you don't, I'm coming for you, doesn't it? So it's like, yeah, I'm a killer, but I've got a morale. I'm not just randomly doing it. I don't think about it. And then he flipped it back on the person who hired him, didn't he? Because this lady hadn't done anything wrong at all.
There's a scene, isn't there, where, and again, it's a little bit of a spoiler, so ignore if you're going to watch it, but there's a scene where he's looking for that guy for ages, and the guy's like quite a nice guy, isn't he? He's like a Hell's Angel type character, and eventually he finds him, and the guy, because he's in the game, he's sort of a criminal, he knows what's happening, so he knows Ray's going to kill him, he knows he's finished. And he's just dead nice to him, isn't he? And they're having this chat, and he takes him to this place where he's going to shoot him. And the guy's like, what a great spot, like, you've picked a great spot here on this sort of like wasteland. And you're like, it's just a bit weird, this. But there was a bit that stuck with me on that where they're talking about, like, does he suffer with, like, like regrets, and does he feel bad for what he does and stuff? And there's a little thing in there where he says about he sees people he's killed in his dream. So like hinting that it's like a bit like a nightmare, and that's some of the price he pays for doing what he does. And they're chatting, and just as he's about to kill him, he said, all right, Ray, like, spot on. He's like, I'll see you in your dreams. And then he kills it, and that stuck with me. I'm just like, bloody hell, it's quite powerful, that, isn't it, to think of. Like, he knows that's going to be a personal toll and a consequence, but he still does it. And the guy, even though he knows he's going to die, he's just totally at peace with, like, yeah, it's game up, I'm going to die. No point, fretting about it, just, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it links into the, these people he talks a lot about the army, doesn't he, and how they trained him in the army, and he chose to go in. And he knew he was killing people there, so what's wrong with doing it in society?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a hero when I do it there, but when I do it here, I'm like, what, a bad person? Because some lady's trying to write a book about him, isn't she? And he says, why, I'm just doing what I did in the army. What's wrong with that? And he's obviously that hinting at what you see things, and to be probably a successful soldier, in many ways, you just have to have that, like, I don't care, like, it has to happen. And that's another underlying theme, isn't it? Is we all sit at home talking about war, go and kill, get them and do that, and it's easy to press buttons and all that. But when you're the person who actually has to do it, and I think that's, obviously it touches on post-traumatic stress and what, and in a way, he's someone who could obviously be really, really in post-traumatic stress and therapy and everything, and he's just decided philosophically, like, well, no, that's what I do, I choose to do it. There's no difference between doing it there or doing it here, so I'm fine mentally. It just goes with the job.
That's the last big theme for me, really, that I think comes out in a lot of these shows of similar caliber. It's back to authenticity in a way. Is that why we enjoy them and we root for them so much? Because all of these characters, they're taking risks, aren't they? They're very much Nietzsche's will to power. They're doing what they want to do, and they're going after it. And it's like they're taking risks. They're less fearful than we probably would, as you said earlier. Like, he's just in robot mode often, like where he's having these big shootouts and stuff. We'd be like crapping ourselves in the corner, like crying probably, wouldn't we? So we like that. We see them. I just think there's something attractive about that, seeing people who are just truly being authentic. He's got his own moral code, and I'm just living my life. Yes, there's risks, but I'm willing to accept those risks. I know I can end up in prison. Even when he ends up in prison in the show, doesn't he? He's like, he's just cool, just chilling around. He's like, yeah, well, I got caught doing that, so here we go. I think that authenticity maybe a bit less so in The Sopranos, because The Sopranos, you saw, for example, Tony in therapy and that, didn't you?
Yeah.
You saw how he wrestled with his decisions, things he'd done to people in the past and how that had impacted him. The Wire, I think, was more authentic from the character's point of view, because you had, like, especially in the guys who you had on the street versus the police, like, they were just living, again, their own moral code, and they were just doing what they needed to do to make money and survive and get on. They were just being authentic. Yeah, I definitely think that comes through in this a lot as well. You definitely feel like he is living his life on his terms, and he accepts the consequences of it. He knows the risk. It's like, yeah, I'll do it anyway.
Yeah, again, it's a bit of a voyeur element to it, I think, as well. So you can watch it from a distance and not have to get involved, so you don't have to make the pact with the devil, but you can root for him. But you're like, oh no, if I had a mate like that who I knew was a killer, I'd weasel them out of my life somehow. I couldn't be, because they could snap at any moment, So, And, we see that if you think of sports, don't you? You've had these characters like Djokovic has an element of rebel and being and Kyrgios in tennis. If you think, they'll say things and they're entertaining to a point, and then you're like, all right, that's enough, back off. You know what I mean? We can't change the whole tennis culture because you're blowing it wide open and saying these things. But, we've had that in squash a bit with a kid who's come on and been world number one, and he's ended up doing it in his own way, his own fashion. Not as brutal as Ray, kill or be killed type attitude. I've got to get in your face and cause disruption, otherwise you'll do it to me. And I don't care about the fallout. You can ban me, you can do this and that, but I'm going to all right, I'll adapt a little, but I'm still going to believe in what I believe in. And not everybody can be doing that. So you can you can see the authenticity a bit, but then that person doesn't understand that other people do want to live their way. So not everybody can be like that authentic. In a way,
and I just mean that it's still attractive to see people, because we know it's like, yeah, we know we could never do this. In reality, we would last 2 minutes, but it is. I still think there's like a warmth when you see people, you just know they're doing it their way and they're not.
Liam Gallagher in we watch a Liam Gallagher documentary, and just it's refreshing. It's just as he is, isn't it? And there are elements of parody, but just they're not saying anything like groundbreaking or highly intellectual or genius. They're just literally saying what's on their mind a little bit, and they keep saying it, and in the end you're a bit like, well, you can't really argue with that. Brian Clough had a bit of that, didn't he?
Yeah.
These types of people. And as a leader, if you're a leader that way and you don't go too extreme, then these are the types of things in sports coaching and perhaps teaching and being a good mate and even a father. And it's definitely not mundane. And there's a high element of leadership there, isn't there? There's a bit of crazy element that this leader isn't totally morally perfect. They'll do what needs to be done to get us to our place we need to get to and what's fair. And we need to fight, otherwise they will batter us. We kill or be killed. We need to find a pragmatic way to solve this, and by almost any means, and that includes bending rules. Now, people don't like that, but as soon as it backfires on the opposition or if it's against you, you go, oh, dirty person, dirty leader, immoral, cheat, doping, whatever. Your Lance Armstrong in a weird way was, you might go, what a fake get and all of it and so on. But he was just, he cheated, he did what he had to do, and he had cancer, hadn't he? And he just full on just doing what he wanted to do, creating his own rules. So yeah, it's like, it's easy to watch it and it's easy to love it. And but when it actually happens in our life, to us, we're a bit like, oh, you can't just make your own rules up. But if we're on the winning side and you don't get caught, you can be a bit like, nah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Financial fair play in football, isn't it? That's the big one at the moment with the Saudi money, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's your club, it's all fine. But if you're the other clubs, it's, no, that's immoral. You can't do that.
Yeah, Steven Gerrard goes there, all that money, and suddenly, Jamie Carragher, his mate, it's not really saying anything. But he was having a go last week at people who went out there, and so therefore he's stuck. He's put himself, because he's put himself into a high moral position, and this is a good lesson from it. Don't speak too highly and morally all the time, because given a chance, a little switch of thing, the world doesn't work so morally, does it? It's a bit like when you're attacking politicians and all these things. You see a lot. People, it's like human instinct. It's pretty obvious people are out for themselves. Why do you think politicians go into it in the first place? Mainly nowadays, it's for themselves, isn't it? Really, mainly. Some people want to do it more for the people, but you can clearly see with the Conservative Party, I think all those individuals are totally vain and they're out for themselves. Mainly to make a name and do all this. But before you go in there as like Labour, calling them out on that, you've got to be super, super squeaky clean, haven't you? Because a lot of people from the opposition party are also kind of doing that. As you see now with the Biden versus Trump thing, don't you? They're starting to find holes in Biden's and his family and things, because Trump was obviously so much of a my rules, you know what I mean?
So it's definitely worth a watch. Brilliant series. Like I say, it's my fourth favourite of all time. Another good one that's I know you've not watched it yet, Danny, but it's a similar vein, lots of similar themes as Barry, so that's a good one to watch. That's, for me, it's up there, but it's not quite as good as Mr Inbetween.
Yeah.
But that's a good recommendation as well. Lots of similar themes around morality and authenticity, and just lots of the themes we've covered on the podcast over the last however many episodes it comes out. So give it a watch. Any final words from you? Are you?
No, just watch it.
When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, you will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now in which there is no past, and there is no future, and there is no thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you. This is red, this is green, this is something, this is nothing, this is solid, this is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.